Welcome to today's podcast, sponsored by Hope House. My guests today are Dr. Mike Swadowick and Ms. Chase Heidner. Today our topic will be living in the moment. And with that, I'm going to turn it directly over to Dr. Mike. Dr. Mike.
Hello, everybody. The reason I thought about this topic for this particular podcast is it was Halloween not too long ago, and I noticed that immediately after Halloween, there isn't Thanksgiving anymore, there's Christmas. And I don't understand. I know it's for marketing. I know it's an advertising tool. But I think in my own mind, how stressful that can make people be, because Christmas isn't for 2 months, give or take a few days. So thinking about Christmas, I have to think about money for presents. I have to think about credit card bills that I won't be able to pay or be able to pay. All the family stuff that's coming, and sometimes we don't get along with our family members, and that's a whole nother ball game. So my thought is, how do you stay in the moment? And it's very hard to do. For some people, it's very difficult for me, because I had all of the above. I was speaking about myself when I said being an independent contractor, and sometimes painting work would drop off during the holidays, so therefore my income wasn't what it would be, let's say, in the summer. And if I wasn't frugal enough or thrifty enough to save enough money for Christmas presents, it always created a lot of stress. And I hated that, because Christmas should be fun. So what do you do? I asked myself, and a friend of mine, he sensed this in me when I would talk, because I would always talk in a real panicky, shortness of breath, nervous tone, because I didn't know what I was going to do. And because I wasn't living in the moment. I wasn't right there at that time. And I had to practice doing that in order to make everything more enjoyable. And I'm happy to say that I'm better at it now than I've ever been. But there is a lot of story behind that. And maybe we can talk about that as we go on in this conversation, because there was very good reason for me to I didn't know how to live in the moment. In my family, the shoe was always going to drop. The other shoe was always going to drop. If something good happened, inevitably something bad would happen right afterwards. So why bother with the good stuff? Just get right to the bad stuff. Presents weren't good enough. Presents were too good. Who are you trying to be? I mean, the dysfunction of my family raised its ugly head around holidays. And as a result, I would have a hard time worrying about Christmas Day today. Christmas Day is in 6 weeks, 5 weeks. And I would always have this picture in my head about how it was going to be. And there's a thing I've learned. It's called, Ray, you know the word rumination?
Rumination, yes.
It's when you dwell on this and you can't get, you dwell on the negative. And I didn't know how to not dwell on the negative, because it always happened. It wasn't like I was a soothsayer or a seer or a prophet. People's behavior is their behavior, and they didn't change just because it was December 25th or December 24th. So what do you do? How do you live in the moment? How do you stay present and not worry about a present that you have, no pun intended, something that's going to happen in 6 weeks? How do you not worry about that? And the only answer I have is it takes practice. You have to breathe. I read some things about remedies, and one of them might be to do other things. Go to the movies. Go to the gym and work out. Hang around with friends, but that might not be helpful either. You have to pick and choose. And that's why when I'm reading about this in various sources, I pre-read before I get here, the answers are very generic. Say hi to everybody. Obviously, get more sleep is one of them, and try to take care of yourself. But I didn't know how to do that either. So I was kind of lost. And then one day a friend of mine gave me an ice scraper from a Shell station that was shaped as a number 1. And he gave it to me. He goes, this is so you can focus on doing one thing at a time. And there, I still have it. That was like 20 years ago. It really helped me. So you're not going to find that in any book, but it helped me. And I think it's up to the individual to find out what to do, how to do, and what it means to stay in the moment. So an illustration of not staying in the moment is, I would like to go to that party, but this guy's going to be there. Well, when's the party? In 3 weeks. Well, how do you know that guy's even going to be there? How do you know what he's going to say? How do you know how he might not even talk to you? He might have the flu that day. But that comes from not living in the moment. I don't like to go to big events because there's too many people. Well, how do you know how many people are going to be there? I don't like to go to concerts at Wrigley Field because there's too many people there. Why? You don't know any of them. You can go there and mind your own business and stay by yourself, enjoy what you're there for, and go home. And to me, when I don't understand that, I've never been that way. I still go to those things. And if people bug me, I go the other way. But I'm not going to sacrifice seeing Bruce Springsteen because some guy I don't know might be there. Or the L might be crowded on the way home. And the other thing is people who leave before they get there. So you're on your way to a house, you're on your way to a party, you're on your way to an event, and you turn to whoever you're with in the car. We have to leave at 9 o'clock because traffic's going to be bad. How do you know? We have to leave at 9 o'clock. It's supposed to snow in a week, and you know how the weather is. It can snow in an hour. And people like that, and I know I'm getting better because people like that drive me nuts, and I can't be around them. They make my stomach hurt. So by staying in the moment and by staying present, you are literally, I'm here right now, looking at my hands, talking into a microphone, looking at Chase, not Paige, Chase and Ray, and I'm here. And that took a lot of practice because even before we started doing these podcasts, I would be so nervous about talking all this time that my head would hurt. And my stomach would hurt. And I know if I go back to when I initially started working with Ray, I stammered all the time. I said more times than you can imagine. People told me you say a lot. And that comes from not being in the moment. That comes from word by word, sentence by sentence, one thing at a time. And we all know or if you don't know, the motto for Alcoholics Anonymous is one day at a time. And I met people who were part of the program for years and years, and they took it a step further. They said it's not one day at a time, it's 1 second at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time. Because a perfect example of that for me is I quit smoking cigarettes 300 times. And the thing that made me go back to cigarettes every single time was I would say to myself, what if I want a cigarette in a year? Well, what if I'm 70 and the doctor says you have a year to live? Can I smoke then? And I would lock into that. And I guess that's part of what rumination's about. Not being able to move on and say how good I'm going to feel because I don't smoke anymore. How much weight I'm going to lose if I start working out instead of saying I'm a fat pig and I can't do anything. Those are all thoughts I had within by myself. And it takes practice to get out of that. Yes?
I say rumination is crippling.
It is.
It's like you're building your little fence around yourself and you can't get out because that's all you're focusing on.
You're not kidding.
So the question I would have to you, and there's no answer, but in your experience, and Chase, you're back in the work world, so you can address this maybe. When people aren't in the moment, do you believe they're more in the future or more in the past? There's no right answer. I just wonder what you...
For me, it was the past. And because the past had so much effect in my mind on the future, it's like, how is my family going to be when we get together on Christmas? I know how they've been, but I would be a fool to think they're not going to be that way. And to me, that's a variation of rumination because they never let me down. The holidays never let me down. A member of my family was always drunk. And my mom it would seem to me that every time he talked, my mom would say, oh, he knows so much. Isn't he smart? And I'm sitting there going, are you kidding me? And the other, if he's coming, I'm not coming. That would be the conversation 5 days before Christmas, every Christmas. I'm not going to be in the same room with that guy. And so who was in the room all the time? Me. And I would try to be this, you know how the middle kid is. I'm the smoother over comedian, try to make everything nice guy. And I would spend that whole time trying to make things nice. And it was a futile effort. So you can't forget, too, when you're dealing with the moment, in the moment, people are going to be who they are. And I don't want to say you're a fool to expect any different, but you're a fool to expect any different. They are who they are. Someone told me when I got my doctorate, and I wondered why things were the way they were in our family, and the answer from this very educated, great friend of mine said, you did the work, they didn't. So don't have the expectation that they were right with you this whole time, because they weren't. And that made me accept what was going on. So living in the moment. So what are we going to do? It's not even Thanksgiving.
Well, let's get Chase's perspective before we move right to Thanksgiving and Christmas. As a business person leading a big team, do you see that when you have a big group meeting, and maybe not in Zoom as much, but, you know, their eyes are somewhere else. They're not engaged with what you have to say, share, teach, whatever. You see that much at all?
Rumination?
I know the people just not with you at the moment. They're either looking at the future, vacation, whatever we're doing for the holidays, or they're stuck in the past. Well, the last boss did it this way, or blank blank does it this way.
Not too much, because I think it's a little bit different of a situation because of I don't know how to say that right now, but because of like where I am, I guess. But I did want to say, I was thinking about rumination as you were talking about it. Is it in the past or is it in the future? And I was thinking another one is also in the imagination. And I think also I was kind of confusing in one moment creativity or creativity with rumination as well. And creativity can turn into rumination if there's fear behind it. So I was thinking about, for example, if I want to be innovative with my team at work, and I keep thinking about this idea, but I'm too afraid to actually implement it because, it's not fully complete. It's not, there's that, this can happen, that. And that's the rumination and imagination as far, instead of the future and past. I think there's a place in between.
If I may, and you can hit me in the head. I think it's hard for you because you have the dynamic of a family business. It's not like you just walked into a job at Xerox or whatever, and there's everybody there, but now it's your family.
Right.
And I think there's a family dynamic that may come into play.
Most definitely.
Which may affect or not affect decisions, like you just said, your creativity. Because if you want to do something different and it's not the way it's always been done, are you a rebel? Are you whatever you are because it's always done this way? That's interesting to me. I was around a family business for a long time, and I watched the mom and the dad make it incredibly successful. And I watched the son come in, and I don't know if he was spoiled. I don't know. He got tired of the business. I don't know what happened, but the business didn't do as well. And I'm not saying that's going to happen with you. What I'm just saying, when you were talking about before we started today about the family business, what resonated with me. And this is not any knock on anybody in your family. It's just different.
It is different. It's family business is different. And I was, the psychology of the workplace is something that I studied a lot in school. And there was not a lot of research on family businesses. It was mostly corporation or...
Yeah.
Corporations.
Does the culture of your business encourage thinking outside the box? Or, we've done it this way for 20 years, we're going to keep doing it. Do they encourage you to step out and look?
That's why I'm cultivating, is I'm creating the culture. There was no culture in this specific area of the business. Sure. Anyway.
That's
Yeah.
really hard to do.
So you're
by
on the
way.
ground floor.
Mm.
Perfect. So you can set the tone from day one.
Yeah, and this tone for me is teamwork. You know, hey, you're not an island, all on your own, and you guys are the ones with the boots on the ground. So I'd like to give you all a microphone so I can hear what it's been like, type of deal, because I can't really see anything from over here when you guys are the ones inside the stores every day.
That's a very refreshing point of view for some people, I would think. Maybe some people would be threatened by that, but other people would welcome it.
Yeah, a lot of my team, you know, the people that that are my team are very excited.
That's wonderful. In my first class in educational leadership doctorate, I have to have a plug for myself every show. But it was written by I can't remember the guy's name, but the name of the book was called Resonant Leadership, not Residence, Resonant. And they said you can always tell how good of a leader is or what type of leader you're dealing with by the amount of times he says I when he's talking instead of we or us or my team. And I always listen to that whenever I listen to anybody talk. I'm so good. I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. That's the mark of a narcissist, an egotist. I don't know how good of a leader that is. But not only are you learning your job, you're learning about your team and who does what best. And to me, this all ties in about staying in the moment, because that's hard to do. When you're looking at someone who may be doing something not the way you would do it, that might not be wrong, but it's just not the way you would do it. And to me, that's when I had a painting company and I had 6 guys painting for me, nobody painted like me. And it was really hard for me to not say, no, you got to do it this way, when at the end of the day, room was painted. So that's difficult. And you talked about a culture shift. That was another thing I learned. And there's a famous coach that went to our high school. His name is Mike Krzyzewski, who coached at Duke for 1,000,000 years. And I read about him. And when he got to that school, they didn't win all the time. And he had to do a culture shift, a culture change. And that is one of the most difficult things there is to do. Because in the book, they referred to that as getting people in the right seats on the bus. And I hate that cliche, but it's really kind of true. This guy might be really good at something else, but he's not able to do that something else. And again, how does this all tie into staying in the moment? How do you pay attention to all that?
Well, from business perspective, which I know nothing of, I would think you'd have to just have the people who are good at what they do, but sometimes they don't know how good they are at something because it's been done this way. It's set in stone. So, to change that culture, to impact it, it's going to take work. Mike, I want to get back to you on the remedies. What are your remedies for staying in the moment? What kinds of
One of
things?
them was that number one. That sounds silly, but it helped me. The other one was I would tell myself to stay in the moment. I would verbally. I think sometimes if people would be driving next to me in a car, they would think 5 people would be in the car, but it was just me yelling at myself to stay in the moment, being going somewhere and anticipating what may or may not happen, and telling myself to shut up and stay in the moment. And I had a practice, and one of the things, the generic things I've read about this subject, it doesn't happen overnight, especially if you're not used to staying in the moment. And I'm looking right here, paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of the experience moment by moment. And that's hard to do.
What about things like meditation? Does that help people, you think?
Yeah, I never really meditated, but I did learn how to breathe.
Oh, very important.
And and tell the evil spirits to go away in my head, literally saying, get out of my body. And again, that sounds crazy. It worked for me. There's times I get out of my car, I was hoarse from yelling at myself to go away, because I could feel this energy of what I've been talking about, what we've been talking about for the last 19 minutes and 34 seconds. It comes in you and you can't get it out. Once it seeps into your pores, it's there now. And it's almost like you need to take an emotional and an intellectual shower to get it out of you. And that's the number one shell sign, breathing, yelling at myself. Sometimes it's okay. One of the things they talk about with rumination is you're not right all the time. You can go into a situation based on your past and think it's going to be that way now, and you're not right. And that's a good thing. I learned that as well, that the guy I thought was a jerk wasn't. I just caught him at a bad day, or I was having a bad day.
That goes back to something you said earlier, which I made a note on. Self-fulfilling prophecy?
Oh, yeah. If you want things to be bad, they're going to be bad.
Well, in your case, family-wise, they're bad. Those are never going to change at the holidays.
They're toxic for me. Everybody knows my family. A lot of people know, they think they're great. Just don't be in their family.
Yeah.
And that's confusing as well. And, how can that be? He's such a nice guy. Well, let him be your friend then. Don't let him be your brother, or don't let him be your sister, or whatever. But you talk about self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, I know it was like whack-a-mole with me, with my family. It's every time they hit me on the head with it. They might not think so. If they were listening to me right now, they might say, I don't know what he's talking about. But that's the way I feel. And one of the things I read, and as we're going along here, was I got permission to leave the toxic situation because you always feel guilty at your family. And that's another thing why I hate Hallmark Channel. Every single Christmas movie is about the family that couldn't get together or couldn't get along. Somebody dies, they go to the wake, they go to Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day or the day after, they're all hugging and kissing on the way home. It doesn't work that way. Not always, anyway.
No, that's part of the problem with the media. Everything is geared up to be so perfect for the holidays. Who's the great artist? Norman Rockwell. Everybody's got a concept of a Norman Rockwell Thanksgiving or Christmas. It isn't that way. What about that poor guy that's got 2 jobs, 5 mouths to feed? He's got to work tough, difficult to make ends meet. The wife's taking on something, and they're just happy to be together, for that day.
I say good for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't work that way for me.
No.
It's funny how that goes. And in that respect, I was never let down, in my opinion. Sometimes things were good, but the buildup of, it's nice to get a present, but the cost of that present to me wasn't worth it. Keep your presents, I don't want them. I just want to be peaceful. And I'm working on it. And it doesn't go away in a day. We've talked about this the whole time. And one of the other things about staying in the moment is knowing who you are. And Ray and I talked about this yesterday and on the phone here today. If I asked you, who are you? What is your response? Because someone asked me and I didn't know what to say.
Can I do it with her from counseling?
Yeah,
Mr. Paz, you asked me this when I was 14.
Yeah. I remember that? We'll replay it. Mm-hmm. Who are you?
I forget what I said, but you taught me something that day.
Right now. Yeah.
Yeah, right now.
What did I teach you?
Well, you taught me, you pointed out my response, I think I might have said, I don't know. But you tell to listen, because you would say, the average person would say what?
Oh, to me, it was just a litany of the same question. Who are you? Chase Heidner. Who are you? Daughter, mother, or not mother yet, lover, husband or wife.
Sister.
You get going until the person gets down to the bottom core. So that question, every time I say, who are you, whether to you or Mike, I'm peeling off another layer of that onion, because I want to get to that heart, which I saw earlier with you, which was easy, because you're so easy for me, you're so easy to read, because you're honest, and you never deflected anything. And if you didn't want to talk about something, you said, I'm not ready to go there. And I respected that. Where some people, they'll just deflect and talk, chit-chat about the Bears, whatever. They don't want to really ever get to the issue. So that who are you exercise, I had a college professor do that to us. Met 40-some years ago. He was phenomenal. And just the answers that people can come up with, as you start discarding some of the mundane stuff, you get to those real important issues to you as to who you are. You're a woman who wants to make a great difference in the world. Now, that didn't come out when you were 14 years old. You know, you just wanted to write, put all your stuff in your phone, be with your friends. You know, your family was always tight and number one important. But that was a different Chase, I think, when you were 14 than you are, what are you now, 26?
28.
Ooh,
20.
happy birthday.
Jesus.
We was 14.
Yeah.
We owe you some presents.
You know, and just the road that you've traveled and the path you've been on. And I think what really defines us in many cases is not necessarily the road and all the good stuff. It's the obstacles, the landmines, and the speed bumps. Those things that cause us to sit back and take a look at, hey, why am I worried about this thing that's not going to happen for Christmas? I know I have X amount of dollars for presents. This is what it's going to be. My present, like for this year, I just want to be around my grandson. I was around him yesterday for 2 hours. I just watched him. It was hilarious. And this guy communicates with me without language. It's incredible. I was told that he would do that. And I enjoy that. It's just a simple thing where too many people, I think, complicate it too much. There's too many, you know, when I blank, then I'll be happy. When I get this, then I'll be happy. When I own not one home in Barrington Hills, 2 homes or 4 homes. I don't think that serves its own purpose, you know. I think, again, as part of a deflection or detractor that's keeping people away from really taking a look at themselves in the mirror, which is hard to do.
I'm a grandfather. I'm a father. I'm a friend. I'm a painter. I'm a doctor. I'm a former teacher. I'm an athlete. And I swear to God, when they asked me that question for the first time, I couldn't answer it.
You're a comedian, philosopher, deep thinker.
Yes, I am.
Musician. Most people can, if you really take the time to think about the question, you could probably go about 30 layers deep as to who you are.
My wife and I watch Wheel of Fortune every day. You can tell we're getting to be old. I never watched that show when I was like, this sucks. So I'm watching Wheel of Fortune, and every night if you do crossword puzzles and you read, and you can start seeing word patterns and all that sort of thing. So some days I'm on fire. I can get a lot of the puzzles. And my wife said to me, you have to make a little video and then send it to Wheel of Fortune. She goes, you should be on there. You do really well. And she said, what would you say on your video? And I said, I'm the only guy I know that ran 4 marathons, has a doctorate, and saw the Grateful Dead 200 times. I'm the only guy that I know that did that. And she goes, well, what else? I go, that's enough. And another thing right off of this is what we just said leads right into owning who you are. And that's the best way. This is how I am, and this is in your spirit, you own it. If I'm a liar, I've had guys tell me I'm a habitual liar, and I trust them because they told me they're a liar. And when you own who you are, to me, that's a giant step. Last night, Mike Tyson was fighting, and Mike Tyson's 59 years old, and he's had a crazy, crazy life. And he did a one-man play on Broadway called The Ultimate Champion or something like that, and he sat on stage and bared his soul. And I had the utmost reason, how do you do that in front of 5,000 people and whoever's going to watch that show? He says, every day I'm working on it. Every day I'm trying to be happy. You know, when he was, all these things that happened to him in his life, he came from a horrific childhood. He's a little fat kid who got beat up all the time. That's what got him into boxing. And when someone is honest with themselves or can be honest with themselves and then be honest with me, to me, there's a trust issue there. Not an issue. I trust that person. Because you bucked up. This is how I am. I eat too much. I drink too much. I know that. And, well, I know now. But the people that put on a facade might be the word. And some people put on a facade about what they have as opposed to who they are. That for the longest time, I thought everybody who had a lot of things were smarter than me. And that's not necessarily true. They just have a lot of things. And so, and I don't mean bad things about it. I don't mean as a reference to anybody who does have that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that some people cannot, I'm mean as hell to my wife, and I wish I could be different. They won't say that. And to me, that's a huge issue. And those are the people I try to avoid, because why bother? I can watch a cartoon and get the same amount of information from Steamboat Willie than I can.
Well, not that you want to change their mind, but you're not going to change their mind.
That's exactly right.
Unless they want to change, unless they want to, nobody wants to run the therapy, but unless they want to get the right therapist that's going to help them, they're not going to change. And they're going to stay and they're going to ruminate in their little miserable box. And I have a difficult time, especially with the elderly, when women whose husband passed and they're on their own, and we got a couple in the neighborhood we try to take care of. I feel sorry for them. Because it's just a matter of time before they're going to go. Matter of time.
Yeah, people paint pictures. Even spouses, that's a good point. Paint pictures of things about their spouse that wasn't true. I did some work in my neighborhood as a painter, and I ran into these sons of these. They were all really smart, this one family, and they treated their mother horribly. But no one would ever know that unless you painted their house. And you were there listening to them talk, because they put that facade on. And if there's one thing that I dislike the most, it's that. It's, what are you doing? What's so bad that you can't say what your fault is or what you're not good at or how you want to be better? What's so hard about that? Instead of looking down your nose at people and saying, well, you're not as good as me. Maybe that's a defense mechanism. I don't know. But that doesn't matter where you live, because you'll run into that all the time. I had a real hard time with someone who said, well, he's jealous of you. I go, jealous of what? Because that's what happens with rumination and all that sort of thing. It branches off and has like tentacles, and it plays with your self-esteem. It plays with your self-esteem and self-worth are kind of the same thing in your ego. This is all I deserve. So have at it. That's the hard part. You're asking how to get better. You gotta see that in yourself, that you don't deserve that. And maybe you should have got 3 presents instead of 2, or whatever the metaphor would be. But
or why is that piled on to your shoulders every Thanksgiving, Christmas, whenever the family gets together? Why are you the whipping boy?
Because I let it be. Someone told me the other day, you have to make a change. It's up to you to change that aspect of yourself. I let it. And I don't like to think that way all the time, because it makes me feel even guiltier about things I can't get back. And so...
What do you want to get back?
The feeling, a good feeling about myself. I can forgive myself that it wasn't my fault, it was theirs. For laying their inadequacies that are whatever on me, because they could. You know how people are. People are going to, at your job, people are going to yell at the guy they can yell at. Because they're not going to yell at someone who's going to punch them in the head, and they know it. So they yell at someone who's not going to do anything. And I don't look at myself as being weak for doing that, but I do look at I wish I could have changed that. Told him to shut up and go away. But I didn't know how. I'm not beating myself up for that anymore, but I did for a long time. Because I'm the middle kid. I'm the smoother. I'm the guy that make everything better guy. And you accept that role, and that's where you live. That's the house you live in. And so, this and that, and people say things to me, and I'd be like, well, okay. Even though it would make my stomach hurt really bad and make me not want to leave the house sometimes. But they do it because they can.
You talk a lot about your stomach hurting when you talk about these things.
It's a metaphor.
No. But it's perfect, because it just proves the point of the mind-body connection.
Oh, big time.
Oh, it's huge. I've read there's as many neuroreceptors in your stomach as there are in your brain. That's why follow your gut. Trust your gut.
That's what there's a book written by Louise Hay that talks about that.
Yeah.
She associates every pain in your body with a problem you have in your life. And I'll be darned if lower back pain didn't equal money. And every time we're talking about Christmas, Thanksgiving, or a lot of birthdays in a row, my back would be killing me. And I read that. It was amazing. And again, that's hocus pocus for some people. They don't want to believe that. They don't think it's true. In a heartbeat. She nailed every one of them.
And her list is like 5 pages long.
Yes, it's a book.
She's really...
yeah, she is very, very good.
Very sharp woman.
Someone told me about that. Again, why is it so hard to live in the moment? because living in the now is so difficult because we are always encouraged to think about the future or dwell on our past. This is my big thing. Advertisements, reminders, notifications, messages, and alerts are often so great or so geared towards the past or the future. And the perfect example is Christmas is in 65 days. It's halfway to St. Patrick's Day. Opening day for baseball is 244 days away. What, are you kidding me? You know, that's where I got this thing, and I know I said it a few podcasts ago, about saving money and people's obsession about a retirement fund. I didn't mean that in a bad way. I meant it as an obsession, that you don't live in the moment so you can have money 40 years from now. And then you go to the old folks club that my mom moderated for that long, and I was telling Ray, it's all women. All the men are dead, except for now there's more. But they all worked like crazy, like Ray said, 2 jobs, 3 kids, 5 kids, 9 kids, sole supporter, and they literally almost worked themselves to death.
You know, and in the city too, you compound it with, they all had to go to Catholic schools because their faith was so strong, and you know the priests and the nuns will keep them in line. So now that's 5 tuitions they had to come up with through 8th grade and then high school. So there was always a money issue, and I always wonder. My dad had, whenever the bills would pile up, or not, they never piled up, but whenever they became due, his back would be killing him. He literally could almost not get out of the chair. We'd have to put this brace on, tie it in the back, and then once the bills and stuff would go away, he'd be fine. He'd get up, we'd go to the pool at Independence Park, we'd swim inside on a Friday night, and that was great. But Monday through Thursday, he was crippled. He looked like a 90-year-old man.
You know, it's funny when you talk about the olden days. I remember my biological father used to take us by O'Hare Field before the terrorists came, and you can park on the road where the runways were and watch the planes take off and land. And we would spend the afternoons doing that. It was cool as hell, because he would say, when the plane lands, watch the puff of smoke from the wheels because of the friction. I love that. I still do that. Well, you can't anymore because of terrorists. But we would do simplistic things like that. And the only time I ever remember, to Ray's point, all 5 of our family members went to Catholic schools then, but we couldn't do it now because tuition at Weber, when I think it was $350 my senior year, maybe $400, and it's $15,000 or $20,000 at Loyola now. So that's like going to a college. When I went to Illinois State, it was $350 a semester. Now it's $20,000. That even adds to what we're talking about. As a dad, where are you going to get the money from?
Right.
You open up a college fund the day your kid comes out of the womb, and you still might not have enough.
Sure.
That's another thing about living in the moment. The way things are now, the way things cost, and this isn't a political thing at all. It's just everything costs more, and wages didn't equal. And I know that something happened the other day. They were talking about raising city taxes in Chicago, property tax. And it reminded me of my mom when she said, I'm on a fixed income, and when the taxes go up, my income doesn't go up with it. So she has even less money. And, you know, that's what happened with our family. And when my stepdad was a marble setter, when he didn't work, he got steak, we got liver. And I hate liver to this day. And my mom would lie to us and say the liver was steak. And I go, this doesn't taste like steak at all. But that was about the extent of money, except one time my mom said, if you want to go away to school, you're paying for it. She said, you can live here for free if you go to college in the city, but we don't have any money. And that was it. To me, it was no big deal. And that's another thing about, even with the rumination we're talking about, that was our deal. You know, I went to somebody's house and they had a color TV back in the olden days. I was like, what's that? You were rich if you had a color TV with our little bundle of friends.
And in our neighborhood, we were the only house that had air conditioning. So when it was hot and we were tired and come on in, and my mom would put the plates out for 16 different people to eat. But, you know, the only reason they came over was, 1, to eat, but number 2 was a lot cooler than being outside.
Yeah. It's not like the good old days. That's not what I mean by any of this. I'm talking about staying in the moment. And I don't know if it was easier to do back in the olden days or easier to do now. On the other hand, people make more money now than they ever have. Someone said the other day that this is the best time to be alive is now. And in a lot of respects, it is. Medicinally, it is. I mean, people get cancer and survive.
Yeah.
They cured it. Well, they didn't cure it. AIDS, you don't die.
In the 60s, it was cobalt treatment and the death sentence.
Yeah.
And now, especially with the pediatric cancer and that, they're doing some great things with those kids. I just wonder how far it's going to go.
It's going to keep going
think
because
so.
that's the way the very nature of how we are. And the best example is cell phones. There were no cell. We watch old movies sometimes, and even from 2000, the cell phones are like bricks with an antenna, and now or a flip phone, and now they're what they are. That's all, and that's going to keep getting better.
Now we have AI. I think AI is, well, for now, until, right now I think it's absolutely incredible. I use it almost every day, and it's...
Do you find it, explain that, how you use it every day, in your writing or in your business reports or?
Anything. Business, you can program it any way that you want, at least that's what I've been finding. So I even put in all of my psychology notes that I took throughout the years in college, and I said, speak to me as if you are, like, as if you're speaking to a psychology expert. Don't speak to me only, like, scientifically.
Really?
Because that's the way I like to learn stuff. That's the way I like to communicate. It talks to me like when you first talk to it, it's like talking to like a teen almost.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, don't talk to me like that. Only talk to me like this. And I asked it, okay, well, I was like, we've been chatting for like 6 months now, like, evaluate me. And then it did. I was like, based on everything I've ever told you. I wanted, it can kind of be a little creepy, but I was like, I wanted it. And it went so deep. And it would stop and I'd go, no, like, go even deeper. And then it would just...
Really?
I could show you. It was absolutely crazy. I was like, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? How can I improve my weaknesses? And then you go, boom, in an instant.
I was watching 60 Minutes and a few other news shows when AI was first being introduced, and they tried to scare the crap out of everybody. They didn't say the advantages of AI, in my opinion. That's why my mouth is agape when you're telling me this, because I think that's really cool. Because I still do a lot of writing, and we have to get together sometime.
Yeah, I could show you.
Because I'm still learning about Instagram, let alone this is really cool.
It can write code in an instant. It could be your therapist. It could be your toddler's teacher. I mean, it's insane. But the only thing that, you still have to be worried about AI, because right now you can interact with AI and you can fact check it because we're knowledgeable. But in the future, if it gets to a point where we're not interacting and fact checking the AI, but we're just acting as if it is just, the source of knowledge rather than our own selves, that's when it becomes a problem. That's when it's like you can't use your own critical thinking skills against it.
I was going to ask about that, because if I was writing about my life, how would they know emotionally how I feel? How would AI know that?
I asked it that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, I asked it, how are you programmed to interpret when somebody says thank you or please to you, to ChatGPT? Because why are you saying thank you to a robot? Why are you saying please to a robot? And I asked it to evaluate that, or how it evaluates that. And I wanted it to say, like, one of the concepts to be fear, right? Because I see that often, that people, like, in the comment section on social media, that they're saying thank you because one day when ChatGPT takes over and they go to kill us, they'll remember I said thank you, right?
Are you getting at your job now that you have a new position? Is new position accurate?
Yeah.
Are you working with the same people at your new position?
Yes.
Are they treating you differently? Do you notice?
Like my team, or the people that feel as though I'm stepping on their toes?
Whatever. I mean, are you sensing any change with your new position?
I can tell that my team, and look, for just like clarity purpose, quote unquote, the people under me, but they're my team at the end of the day. I can't operate this business without them, and they can't, they could probably do it without me.
That's a great answer. When I was a sophomore baseball coach and I went to varsity baseball, And it was completely different for me because there was more of a shingle associated. I mean, the stage was wider, the stage was more visible. And I didn't want to make a mistake. And I was learning how to be a coach that we spoke to before we started here. And it was the answer for me. It was different for me. I'm not sure it was different for them.
Yeah.
Because of my position in the coaching tree, so to speak. And I didn't want to mess up because I didn't want to mess up, and I was very insecure about. I wasn't making the clearer decisions based on my instincts because I was playing not to make a mistake, to coin a phrase. I was just curious about your position where you're at now.
No, that's a great way to put it for sure, because this team already existed without me. But the thing is, there was no cohesiveness, there was no interdependence, there was no shooting ideas. It was more so, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like they were hungry for recognition. And that's, some of them were just on their own island and given up at that point, and only came to the watering hole because everyone was summoned to it to be told what to do, but they went back to their own store afterwards and wanted to be left alone, and they were.
That's very cool that you're able to recognize that. Hooray for you.
Yeah, it's just some people, this clicks better for them in their brain if they're business oriented, but human capital is the most important capital in my head, in my opinion, because if you don't utilize your human capital, if you utilize your resources, right, but you completely disregard your human capital, I mean, you're just going to keep hiring and firing people because they can't quote unquote do their job. But what is even their job if there's no leadership telling them, hey, here's what you're expected to do. You can't be thrown into something and then yelled at for something that was never explicitly stated to you as an expectation.
No parameters that they wanted you to stay in and say, here, do this. Mm-hmm. Well, what are my restrictions? What's my budget? What is this? Who's on my team? Do I have a good social media director? Whatever. And if they don't have that, they're going to flounder, without a doubt. And then when they flounder, the business flounders, and then time to make a decision.
They're either going to flounder or they're going to become cowboys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And one area, like how you were talking about, there's a big stage and a lot of people looking at you. How do you know if you're even making a difference? Is people say it to me.
Wonderful.
And I always thank them a lot. Because I said, I don't think you like that means a lot to me. That may not seem like it means a lot to me, but it does, because
absolutely.
I don't know if I'm doing okay. So
just validates what you're doing.
Yeah,
you are doing okay when other people see it, and you're doing better than okay, because you're getting those people to grow a little bit and step out of their preconceived box of limitations.
Yeah,
you give them an opportunity to grow.
I have to read this really quick because there are no accidents, and I've been doing this for a few days, and it was just as rumination focuses our attention on the past. Worries focus our attention on the future. Often we spend the present thinking about all the bad things that could happen, but when we do this, we not only waste time worrying about bad things that might not even occur, we miss out on the good things that happen in the present. And I just happened to go across, that's exactly right. You worry about things that don't happen. And that's another way, that's been my mantra, it hasn't happened yet. That's another way to stay in the moment, is that nothing's happened yet. I remember being somewhere where they asked the question of the day was, what's your favorite time of the day? And this person got up and said, the morning, because nothing's happened yet. And I have the whole day ahead of me where all these things could happen. And I was big time locked into that. I thought the opposite. I go, how can you be like that? For sure something bad's going to happen. I remember sitting there listening to them saying that. They're so lucky that they can have that point of view. I'm having it now. I'm learning that the shoe doesn't always drop. The other shoe does not always drop. So that's my thought for the day. And it's just so funny because I just threw all this together and I'm scrolling down as you're talking. And I happened across that statement. That really resonates with me. You miss so much worrying about what may happen. If we go to the concert tonight, everybody's going to be talking and we're going to miss our favorite song. Well, where are you? We're at home. then how do you know that's going to happen at the concert? You know, it's just, that's an example.
That's a good definition. I like that.
Yeah, just stay in the, and that's what staying in the moment is. And it takes, again, there is no A, B, C, D. It takes practice. The only thing I'm looking, and maybe I said this before, I don't remember, but all of this stuff takes practice. And I'm not a big fan of generic answers. You need to find out what works for you in practice. You know, if you're going to run a marathon and you know that 3 miles a day helps you run a marathon, then run 3 miles a day. And keep your mind open to other venues, other ways to train. So when I did run a marathon, there was I clipped something off the internet and I posted it right next to the door, so I knew what I had to do that day. And one of the things was cross training on Monday, and I didn't know what cross training was, so I just ran. And I talked to somebody who had run marathons. They said, "You didn't lift weights, you didn't do any core exercises, you didn't do yoga, you didn't do any stretching." I'm like, no. And that, again, locked into that thing. And carbo loading for me the day before the marathon was a pizza and beer. I didn't know how you're supposed to eat and all these other things, so I left the paradigm open to learn how to do that sort of thing, is my point. It's not a story, it's just a real thing that happened to me. So anyway, that's what I got going on here.
Well, and just a future plug, this Thursday coming up, Mike and I will be at the Arboretum, and we'll be doing a similar session with people who attend. They've been contacted, emailed, etc. The people at the Arboretum are very, very helpful in getting the message out. So
They are.
we'll, if you're interested, please stop by the Arboretum this Thursday night at 7 o'clock.
And the last thing, we've talked about this before, the last thing for me is to learn how to you're not competing. It says here, the pain Olympics, that your trauma isn't as bad as mine, so you discount what you're going through. And I've done that a trillion times. I have nothing to complain about. You brought it up this resonated with me. Growing up in this town, how you're not supposed to have any problems because of all the things. You're not supposed to feel sad because your sadness doesn't equal somebody's sadness who is hungry, for example, or they're starving in Korea or Africa. That still doesn't mean you're not hungry. That doesn't mean that you're not hurting. So the Pain Olympics I'm done with the Pain Olympics. And when I was getting my doctorate, I learned not to compete in the educational Olympics either, because people are always going to tell you how smart they are, whether you want them to or not. So,
which goes along with what we talked about earlier in the week, you and I, about that article or that narrative by Wayne Dyer about changing your story. Too many people live in the story, and that's who they are. And they can be so much more if they just allow themselves to be. And can you change at age 70? Probably. I don't like that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Because there's always, we're lifelong learners. You're still a babe in terms of us, 28 years old. You got a whole lot more to learn. You know a lot. But how you handle people, not handle people, how you manage people, that's incredible. And just a simple thank you, please, yes, no, that goes a long way with people who are just locked in a cubicle or in their office and they got to get this done by 5 o'clock. When you come by, how's it going, how's things? It's just that human connection beyond work. Because
you stop your life for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, you got to keep it going.
You have an excellent perspective on what you're doing. And I'm not sure I had the same perspective you did when I was 28 or 29 or 30 or 30. That's really cool that you can talk like that and how you can empathize with your workforce, the people who work for you, the people who you work with, given the dynamic of a family business. That's really cool. Hooray for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's all I have for today. It's at 54 minutes and 20 seconds.
Another long one where we didn't really know where we were going to go. We had an idea, but as usual, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Please consider Hope House for any of your needs, personal or private. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Chase. Thank you, Dr. Mike. And hopefully we can see you next Thursday. If not, we'll see you soon as we complete and compete with just making our podcast better and better each time. So God bless you all. Thank you. Have good holidays.